All right, so we're gonna each do our own intros, yeah?
Yes.
All right.
Go for it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Creative Contact. I'm your host, Kia Orion. I am so stoked for today's episode. This has been a long time coming.
Really?
Probably about a year and a half in the making, somewhere in there. This is a dear friend, and I'd say mentor, inspiration, and ass kicker, all wrapped up into one. My good friend out here in Chiang Mai, Ronny Hermosa, who I met, I believe it was at a Nomad Coffee Club.
It was on a Friday.
Out in Chiang Mai. It was a Friday afternoon. My man seemed like he knew what he was talking about. So I went over and said, hey, let me pick his brain for a bit. And he was fortunate enough to drop some gems on me. So, Ronny, we're going to get into kind of the monster that was created through online courses and everything towards the end. But just so that folks kind of know what they're in for, give them just a little teaser on what they can expect.
Well, also super happy to be here with you today, Kia. And for the people in my community, because this is our post for the 10,000 followers, guys. We made it to 10K. I'm super happy about this community we've been building, and just to be in this tribe together with you guys. This group about learning how to design with Canva has been growing. I've been taking care of it, and you've been an amazing audience so far, given me so much love and so much engagement in the group that got me where I am today with Canva. Basically, they decided to hire me because we were doing a good job here. So I want to thank you for that, really. And I wanted to celebrate this milestone of 5 figures, 10K followers in our group, by having a little surprise piece of content here with the best interviewer in town, Mr. Kia Orion, who is also a member of this group. Kia is an artist. He's a music producer, a singer, an amazing storyteller, and the best interviewer I know, really. Like, I've listened to his podcast several times, and he just knows how to get the best out of people. So I thought, I always wanted him to interview me. So this is it. Today we are going to dig deep in my past, maybe my present, and hopefully maybe a little bit of future, with Kia asking me questions, so you kind of get the backstory of who I am. And I know I've never done this with you guys, so that would be the opportunity.
Y'all know this final form of Ronny, but what you don't know is that it's been quite an adventure getting to this point. Fortunately, we've had many dinners and discussions so that I know a little bit, but there have always been bits and pieces that I kind of wanted to dig in to deeper. This is a great opportunity. Yes, my day, giving me the key to the kingdom. Another thing, too, just for the group, is shout out to y'all, because I've been in there just as a designer, but also just as a fan, to kind of see how Ronny navigates that. It's a lot. It takes a lot of work, and I'm not sure if y'all, maybe you know, but how much work goes into it behind the scenes. And so if you are a part of the group and you're listening, watching, I'm stoked for you to kind of just peek a little bit behind the curtain and see how much work and time Ronny puts in a group. It's kind of my gold standard for how to run a good Facebook group, just because I think it can be really rewarding, but also it looks a lot easier than it actually is to execute in person. So if you're curious about that stuff, stay tuned. So, you ready to rock and roll?
Yes, I am.
All right, brother. So this is something I know kind of a little bit more about, like midlife, kind of this chapter, because for those that don't know, we both are out here in Southeast Asia. We're in Thailand, we're in Chiang Mai, and so I was kind of doing the digital nomad thing. Ronny had been out here traveling a ton before, and so I was also interested both in his work, but also his travel experience, because that's really important to me now that I have the option to kind of travel around, and he'd been all over the world. So I was kind of, that's really where the story had started for me. But for folks that don't know, let's take it all the way back. You know, when it comes to every good superhero, they've got an origin story. And I'd be curious, I know a little bit about your past, but for those that don't, take us back to, both where you were born and maybe what's your a little bit about your parents and kind of your family, how you got there in the first place.
So I'm 39 years old. or young. I was born in Belgium in a small town called Virton. My native language is French, for those of you who didn't know. And Virton is kind of like a peaceful, like kind of countryside kind of town, not much going on. It's about 10,000 people living there. And that's where I grew up. I kind of liked it, living there and growing up there, because I didn't know anything else, then that was my reality, right? And it's pretty peaceful, not much going on, but there were like 3 or 4 schools, a bunch of young people, all my friends, like my best friend. I still have friends I met in preschool, like kindergarten. So some of my oldest friends I met when I was 4 or 5 years old. So that's
crazy.
The kind of city where you kind of keep these friendships along the years passing by, because people are still around. Some of them stuck around. If I go back there, I would probably see, if I go to a cafe or if I go out one day, I'll probably see some of the folks I met when I was very young. So
that is nuts. I'm from a small town, not quite a little bit different, but I think it also takes a certain type of person to keep in touch with those folks, because when it is such a small town, people move off and you never hear from them again, whatever. It's not an unintentional thing to end up in a town like that. So I grew up in a small town because my dad really values that kind of privacy, that life away from culture. What did your parents do that either for their work, or was it a personal decision to kind of settle in a place like that?
Okay, so I don't know why they settled there. I think my mom is born there. My father came from another city, a bigger city in Belgium.
Oh, okay.
But they met, if I'm correct, during their studies. They studied, typically in Belgium, if you are from a small city, there's a high chance you will study either in Brussels, the capital, or in Liège, which is the second biggest city in the French-speaking part of Belgium, or some of the big cities. So they met in one of these big cities where there was a higher education school, and that's how they got together. I don't know the exact story, but when I was born, my father was working with my grandfather, the father of my mother, who was an entrepreneur. Actually, he had 2 shops, my grandfather on my mother's side. His name is Ernest. And so my grandfather had 2 shops. The first shop was a motorbike shop, and the second shop was a bicycle shop. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather was managing and running the motorbike shop, and my father was the manager of the bicycle shop. And at the time, my mother worked with my father running the bicycle shop. So my father was like the go-to bicycle guy in Virton, which
that's dope.
That's dope. And they had these nice shops with all the bikes. And this something you don't know about me, influenced me quite a bit, because I became a BMX kind of superstar.
No
very
way.
Young. Yeah. I never told you that.
This is a different Ronny, dude. I'm gonna need those stories. So Canva Ronny with the blue glasses, I can start to see where the swag is coming from now that we had BMX superstar Ronny. How does that play? So, and just for folks, I know a little about your family, but you have siblings?
Yes, I have a younger brother. He's 4 years younger than me.
So you growing up with a little bro,
yep.
This young Ronny, inspired by the bike game.
Yep.
At what age around do you start getting into bikes? Yeah.
5. At 5 years old, I was doing my first competition with BMX. I was the youngest in my category. I think I earned some medals for being the youngest. Got my ass whooped during the first year because I was young and not very fast. But that was, the age I started, 5. And then I continued doing BMX competition. It was every Sunday. It was quite intense because my family was also running the city's club, like BMX club, because my father was running the best bike shop in town. We were also involved in the organization of the BMX kind of club. Each city had a club in my area, so every Sunday there was competition, and the Virton club, so my city's club, had 25, 30 young people involved doing competition, different ages. So that was a whole thing. It was like a real kind of second family where we would just do BMX and competition every Sunday and training twice a week. So it was pretty intense.
Wow.
Yeah, but the whole family was involved.
That's fascinating. I never knew that before.
You know?
And so young Ronny is kicking butt, taking names, doing the BMX thing. And when does that go all the way through middle school, high school?
No.
Or when does that kind of peter out?
That goes all the way to 11 years old, where, I don't know, I kind of got tired of it. I think it was a really stupid excuse for me quitting this. Or first, because the club in my city kind of disappeared. Because the land where we had the BMX field, I don't know how you call it, like the dirt racing field.
Yeah.
It was built on a land that didn't belong to us, and so at some point the owner of that land decided, okay, we are going to build a car dealership on this land. So they basically took back the land, and the club disappeared. And if I wanted to continue, I had to go like 20 kilometers away, which was a little bit heavy, you know, when your parents have to drive you there twice a week. I don't know, it was just different, the spirit of this club and the people who were part of it. And you know, it was not just the competition, it was this, plus every time we would have a competition in our city, usually on a Sunday. After that, there would be like a big after party at my grandparents' house where everybody would gather, like, you know, big meal, big thing. So it was kind of a festive thing that all of a sudden everything went away when we didn't have this land anymore. So
car dealership.
It was different, car dealership.
And okay, so then what is Ronny like in high school? So the bike thing kind of peters out. Are you interested in business at this point? I'm not sure as an American what even high school looks like in Belgium.
High school is very chill, I would say, in Belgium. Like we have basically like a common set of courses you go through, and it's only later that you can actually kind of start choosing your classes and topics that you want to really specialize in. You don't really go far in the specialization. If I could describe what I chose, it would probably be languages. So when I was 14, I started to learn, we start to learn English. Everything is in French until you are 12 years old, and then you start to get into English classes. Most of the curriculum is still in French, but you have English classes. That was the first foreign language I studied. And then I took Dutch, because in Belgium, both Dutch and French are the official languages. And then I took Spanish when I was like 15. So by the time I finished high school, I already had like 6 years of English, 4 years of Dutch, and 3 years of Spanish.
Wow.
Yeah.
My man's got languages. So when you graduate high school, are you thinking that's the angle you want? Are you thinking college? Are you thinking okay, because I know some folks.
Most of the kids, it's different than in the US in the sense that it's much less expensive. Like we don't have students debts like you guys do. It's much more chill. I think my university like scholarship, the cost of my studies, it was around $1,000 a year for the school tuition. Then you had to kind of course pay like the books and stuff like that. But 1 year in the second best business school in Belgium was $1,000.
If you're an American listening to this, you just reached out and slapped Ronny across the face, because in the States, dude, it is so nuts, the college debt and everything. So that's amazing that you're able to actually go do something like that that's affordable. And why business? Is it high school, or are you thinking?
Before getting into university years, maybe we talk about what happened in between high school and university, because my auntie, Rosemary, was kind enough to kind of talk me into going abroad for a year, and she paid for my 1 year abroad. So I went to the US.
Oh, wow.
In Indiana.
What?
And, exactly. So basically it was kind of an exchange program where you ask, okay, where do you ideally want to go? And of course I said California or Florida or New York, something nice, but I ended up in Indiana. But it was cool. I mean, I was very lucky with the host family they placed me into. It was a single mother, but the coolest person ever. So she became my friend. Her name is Camby. If you're listening, Camby, I love you. She came to
Shout out
visit me in
Camby.
Chiang Mai like not so long ago.
Wow.
After 20 years of not seeing her, she kind of showed up and she came to Chiang Mai. We spent like 10 days together. It was great.
Wow.
So so I spent 1 year in the US. I redid my senior year of high school there, and it was very different from Belgium.
What were the differences?
Everything
do you
was
remember 'em?
different. I mean, I felt like I was in a movie. Like, you know, like you have the high school with the jocks and with the cheerleaders,
Nerdy
and
kids.
the nerdy kids, and
Drama kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
dude, that's the States.
The Marilyn Manson kind of.
Yes, the
kids.
gothic kids.
Yeah. So it was like this, and I didn't really know where to fit, who should be my friend there, and then, I kind of find my way out.
Did the girls like you in Indiana?
I don't know.
My man.
I remember I liked one specific girl, and then she kind of became my best friend, and I was like I became the best friend.
Listen, man, it's the trope. That's the story of my life, bro.
I know.
I feel you. But the reason I ask is in my high school we had a German foreign exchange student, and the ladies loved him just because you got that accent, you got that novelty.
Yeah, I had that.
That European novelty. Were like,
I had that.
ooh, this guy's.
Feel that.
yeah.
But it was very
The
different.
accent.
Also because, you know, in Belgium it's pretty liberal. So me and my friend, like we used to party and have fun and go to concert, go out, sometimes get drunk. You know, stuff young people do, or at least in Europe.
In America, you can't
And
do
in
that
America,
shit.
you're just there and you cannot even buy a beer.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a bit tough to adjust because I had like a pretty good time during my youth in Belgium. I was going into clubs, like to techno raves and stuff like that. It was fun. And then I got to the US and it's very conservative.
Going to soccer games and
And
shit.
you can go to church group, or you can go to, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
to
4-H.
go see a football game.
Yeah.
Or mini golf or something like that. And I kind of had a hard time adjusting. But then when I accepted that, it was cool. And also I met one of my best buddies, Derek, who's also a Belgian guy, but I happened to meet him over there. It was kind of in the same exchange group. We became best friends, and we are still very friends today. So
That's crazy. I didn't know that either. I think that is actually a huge difference between often European countries, Australia, New Zealand, and the States. Is that in the States we like just kind of like shuffle people along this kind of funnel like very as fast as possible, and so we don't put as much of an emphasis on that kind of exploration as I think often Europeans do, Kiwis and Australians, and but you learn so much in that year abroad. You learn the world's bigger than yourself. You just have these other experiences. So when you come back to university, are you kind of refocused at this point? How are you feeling?
I was always focused. I mean, I never lost. I don't know what focus I had at the time, but I was always a good student. I just enjoyed being in the US and having something different. Just one bump in the road, I became addicted to StarCraft.
Yes.
Over there, and I spent a lot of time playing StarCraft online. For those of you who don't know what StarCraft is, it's a video game, a strategy game, and I know Kia is also a retired StarCraft player. Addict, and so it was very addictive. It's a Blizzard game. So Blizzard is this company that produced more recently World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, all like
Huge games.
Dota, like all these really addictive games. And at the time, StarCraft was the game. And so a friend of mine over there, an American friend, introduced me to this, and I became completely hooked. And I was playing my worst time, like 10 hours a day. So that was not very good. I'm not very proud of that, but since we are on the podcast telling about my life.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. That's the difference of being opportunity, because these days you could totally do, some sort of Discord something with that, and maybe be able to monetize playing StarCraft 10 hours a day. But back then, it was just a different world.
Just a waste of time.
Just a waste of time.
But it was fun.
We all had ours. I feel you. I definitely had that video game phase too. So you major in business, you go to university. What are those university years like for you?
It was cool. I was in a business school, a management school. So it was a good school, and I kind of ended up there without really thinking too much about it. My auntie, who advised me to go study 1 year abroad and finance that, so I'm still really thankful for that, kind of helped me figure out which school was a good school. So she was a very active woman, so she was also a career woman, so she knew which school were the good schools and easy to find a job after going to this school. So I kind of followed her advice. I didn't really know, so business sounded good. Went there. It was nice. I made a bunch of new friends. It was a little bit impressive and overwhelming at first, because you have all these new courses. Sometimes it's quite hard. You had to study quite hard.
Especially going from such a small town.
Yeah, I had a major disadvantage in Dutch, because people who speak Dutch in Brussels, like in Brussels, Dutch education is much more intense because almost everybody's bilingual there. But coming from the very like far south of Belgium, where it's like Belgium is basically the north speaks Flemish, the south speaks French, and I was in the top south. So nobody really speaks Flemish there. And the teachers, they were not very pushy and either very good. I hope nobody of my teachers is listening. But yeah, so my Dutch kind of sucked when I got there, especially after 1 year in the US where I didn't speak Dutch at all.
Yeah.
I was massively behind. So I had to really study hard. And I did study hard my Dutch because it was an important topic. We had 7-8 hours a week of Dutch, some courses entirely in Dutch. And so, yeah, I did study a lot of Dutch.
And in those 4 years, are you, as you're learning the business side of things, do you realize, okay, this is something I'm actually passionate about? Do you kind of develop new interests and so on? I wasn't sure exactly how, I know kind of where you ended up, but I wasn't sure the path that got there. Did you already take an affinity, did you already have an affinity for the business? What were those college years like?
Well, actually, it's kind of the opposite happened. Like during the first semester, I took a class and it was book summarizing class. So you have to pick a book, read it, and summarize it.
Every week?
No, just once. It was one semester. But it's not like, it was not an easy thing. Like the summary.
That sounds dope.
It's like a mini thesis. You have to go in depth, and it's kind of like analytical skills, reading skills.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so I did this, and I picked a book.
You remember?
Yeah, it's a French book, so it probably won't ring a bell, but it's called L'illusion néolibérale, and that's translated into English, it would be like the neocon illusion. So it's about neoliberalism, and if you're a little bit into economics, I don't know if you are, but it speaks about the ultra-liberal, like right-wing kind of economic school of thinking, like the Chicago boys, they call this trend of economic schools. So the kind of schools where Ronald Reagan come from, and this kind of ultra-liberal, like liberal in the sense like opening the economy,
right.
Like everything that is public needs to become private. So privatization of this finance as the driving force of the economy and all these things.
That's like trickle down, right? Isn't like that popular?
And it's also like basically this book opened my eyes and showed me how finance was screwing the planet and the people over. Like,
wow.
I realized how this world actually worked in terms of economics, and this really had it was like a shock therapy for me. Like it was like, oh, I didn't know it was so messed up. And so basically what happened is that I became an activist during my first semester of me studying economics. I became an activist, I became anti-system, and I really wanted to build a fairer world, a better world. But I still believe that being in a business school would help me get there. So I started to read everything alternative I could put my hands on, and going to meetings, and I just became a hardcore anti-system, anti-capitalism almost,
Is that what inspired Fair Trade?
Yeah, that's how I got there.
Fascinating. That's great. That's a dope transition. So you go through that. You have this life-changing class, and that's amazing. I don't think I had any class that hit me quite like that.
That's because you're in America.
Yeah. Hey, so you do that, and then when you graduate, do you already have the idea for FTC?
No, but it kind of gradually escalated, I would say, my passion for nonprofits and for trying to basically put my skills and energy into projects that will contribute to building a better world instead of screwing it more. Like I felt like most of the people graduating from my school, they became consultant for one of the big C's, you know, like Ernst & Young or Price Waterhouse or whatever,
McKinsey.
Deloitte, yeah. Or they became bankers, or they work in finance, or they work for big companies like Coca-Cola. And I had spent my time reading about how these big multinationals were screwing everybody over. So I wanted to dedicate my time and career to something fairer than that. But when I graduated from this university, I didn't know where to start.
So where does the fair trade connection idea
Comes
actually?
later.
It comes later.
Yeah.
So what's in between those two?
Yeah. So in between those two, I go back to Virton and start a job there because my mom kind of hooked me up with something like a small enterprise that needed a guy at this time. And she kind of heard it was a good salary. So I got there, and it was a transition after living for 5 years in Brussels, which is the capital, going back to the little city. It was kind of hard, but I was kind of attracted by my first job experience, and I heard there was a good pay. So went there. It turned out it was not a good pay and not a good job. So I stayed there 3 months. And
Welcome to life after college.
So I quit.
Yeah.
Oh, I got fired, but I wanted out anyways. So after that, I went back to Brussels.
Sorry, Ronny, I want to keep going back. You can't just skip over getting fired, bro. What? You got to give me a little more details than that. What's the gig? What happens?
So the thing
That's
is,
juicy right there.
It's not so juicy, but it's kind of boring actually. But the boss I was working for was kind of a tyrant, you know, like he was the kind of boss like, hey, do this, take the car, go the other side of the country and just go visit this guy and come back. And so it was kind of crazy, no rules. Like he was just a pure breed entrepreneur who was just to do basically anything he could for his business. And he thought the whole team should act accordingly. Though, you know, if you are an employee, you're not like as involved as the founder and director of this small company. It was a boring company. On top of it, it was doing neon signs and repairing them. Really.
How does he fire you? What's that look like?
So the story is that at some point he was negotiating with a Chinese dude, or I don't know, and he doesn't speak good English. So he asked me. He sent me some kind of like. He sent me an email with a draft of a contract. He said, Ronny, can you draft this contract and translate this into English? So I did my best to translate the contract. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an official translator. I just happen to speak both French and English. So I did my best to translate this, and then I sent this to both of them. And then the Chinese dude is like, hey, this sentence, could we change it like this, like this? So I changed it. And I don't know, there was some kind of discrepancy between the French version and the English version, and he fired me over this.
Wow.
Yeah, but
his loss, man. Now
I was not going to stay there anyway.
Like, okay, this is my ticket out. So you say, this is the world, give me a sign.
Yeah.
Chuck the deuces. You bounce, and as you're saying, what happened after? What was
but
the
it's
next
still
step?
a long thing, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit.
Okay.
Because after this, went back to Brussels, took another job, which also turned out to not be a good job for me. After this, I decided, because at the time, I had a girlfriend who lived in Spain, and I decided to take my chances, go live there with her, see if it works, come back after 6 months with a broken heart. It didn't work. And that was one of the lowest moments in my life. You know, I just left everything to move and try to live life with her over there. Didn't happen.
And it's like you're searching for career.
Yeah,
love doesn't work out.
I didn't really know. It was a big mess in my life at this stage.
And how old was this?
I was 24. It was in 2004. Yeah, 24. I came back to Brussels really brokenhearted. Like I really loved this girl at the time, and then she broke my heart. So I arrived in Brussels a mess. And my friends take me over, like they take me and say, okay, Ronny, let's cheer you up here. I have a very good friend. His name is Guillaume. I hope you meet him someday. And he really, like, he's a cool guy, like a really cheerful guy. And we spent some good time together until I could figure out my life. And then I decided to go back to school, and I actually did 2 more years of studying development. So I really got into international development, things that I was passionate about, developing countries, NGOs, how big international organization could help alleviate poverty and fight climate change and all this kind of stuff. So I did 2 years of stuff I was really passionate about. I really loved that. Made a whole set of new friends in Brussels, had a really good life. And that's what led me to fair trade.
Aha. Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. I remember, I believe you mentioned that to me once before. And so you have that. I think it's important to have those, I don't want to call them setbacks, but those times in life when things it all hits the fan, because then it really forces you to think deep, rather than if the job fresh out of college would have been a good paycheck, it might have gotten you on this different kind of treadmill where you just plod along. But instead you have this kind of real low point, and then it allows you to kind of open your mind up. So you're with Gio, and then do you remember, I know it's kind of, sometimes it's like a slow growth, but do you remember like the spark that led to the idea of Fair Trade Connection? Like almost the day when it was like, that was an epiphany where like, oh, this is the thing. It was not an
epiphany, it was kind of like a natural flow leading me there. So the way it happened, these 2 years of post-masters, I don't know how you call that in English, but I already had a master's, but it was 2 more years. So towards the end of this second degree, I had to do an internship. And so I decided to do an internship with Oxfam Belgium, who is the largest fair trade retailer in Belgium. So I worked with them, not exactly with them, but with another NGO that was kind of a sister NGO located in their building. And it's the Clean Clothes campaign. So it was just, this lady, what's her name? Kind of forgot her name. But she was a very good activist, and she was like running some campaigns to fight for the workers' rights in the supply chains of the big sportswear company like Nike, Reebok, Adidas, and Puma. Like, so these workers were, back then, I don't know about today because things changed, but they were kind of exploited in sweatshops and all this like controversy about where your Nike shoes or your stuff comes from. And so that was these years, and I was basically catapulted into this little NGO and given some responsibilities to kind of investigate and write some campaign material. So I did that for 6 months. And I was surrounded by the whole Oxfam family in Brussels, or close to Brussels. And that's where I got really close to Oxfam, fair trade, and everything.
Now we're starting to get into the good stuff. So we're thinking Fair Trade Connection.
Not yet. We're thinking fair trade.
We're thinking fair trade.
Yeah.
And we're working for Clean Clothes
campaign.
Yep. And how long are you with Clean Clothes?
6 months, just the duration of my internship. I was still like at university at this time, so the internship was 6 months. But I did that, and I also worked during the summer as like a student job with Oxfam. So I got to know, because I already knew them, they needed somebody to work in the warehouse. It's funny because I was a master's like high school plus 6 years, and I was packing boxes in a dusty warehouse.
That humility though goes a long way.
And I loved it. I mean, I felt like I was doing the right thing. So the story was like this. I decided, okay, I still had to write my thesis for school, but I kind of figured, okay, I want to work for Oxfam. This is the one company in Belgium I feel comfortable with. I feel aligned with their values. I have to figure out a way to get in here. So I would just take anything, and that's how I was packing boxes in the warehouse and swiping the floor every end of the afternoon. And I was just stay put there until something came up.
And what was that something?
And something came up.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a good tactic, is to say, this feels, as long as this feels right now, I can ride this wave. Yeah. And you'll know, if you're listening, you'll know when the next thing shows itself. Exactly. And so what does that kind of take
something came up. Let me adjust myself here. And that something was every 2 years there is the World Fair Trade Summit organized somewhere in the world. And this year, 2007, it was going to happen in Belgium.
No
and
way.
And they needed an organizer, a coordinator for this conference. So I applied. I got pushed by Oxfam, like the CEO of Oxfam at the time, the general secretary. He kind of took me as his candidate for the job, and I got it. So I became the coordinator of this Fair Trade Summit 2007. Took place in Belgium.
How does that feel? Like
it was great.
When
I was like,
and all of a
yes,
sudden,
finally.
okay.
I came to him. I was overly confident, like always. You know me. I was like, look, I've been packing boxes for 3 months. I was waiting for something like this, so you gotta give this to me. And I was cashed like this, and he was like, yeah, okay, you are my guy, but it's not entirely my decision. I will push you. And then I just crushed the other guy, and then
I just
got
crushed
the
him.
job.
I poisoned the other candidate.
No,
and
I
got
just
the job.
I guess my language skills did the rest, because I could speak Spanish, Dutch, English, and French, and I was gonna host organizations from all over the world. So I guess the Spanish kind of
That's a huge
gave
bonus
me an edge.
because communication is everything when
Yeah.
it comes to something like that. So you land this big gig because that's always the thing is you want the opportunity, but then when you get it, is how do you handle it? So you get this big opportunity that falls in your lap, and then it's like, oh dang, like now I actually got to do it.
I was happy about it. It started really slow because it was a 5-month contract. The conference was for like end of May, and we were December? Beginning of January. No. I had 5 months to do the whole thing. It started really slow, like nothing was going on. So at the beginning, I was just filling up my days with whatever I could find. But then as we got closer and closer to the conference, it became like insane. I was receiving 100 emails per day.
Events like that are such
It was
a payment.
such, like,
There's a lot.
All over the place. There was 300 participants from 70 plus countries. So I had to get visas for all these people.
Oh
I
my
had to get
God.
the venue. I had to deal with Hindus who don't eat beef, and Muslim who don't eat pork, and vegans, and
You're like,
so
okay, we're just not eating at the conference. You
no,
find
it
your own
was
food.
fun. It was really fun, and it was really intense. Like a month before, during the thing, it was like crazy, but I loved it. I loved every single bit of it. I could hire my friends to help me during the event, so I put together a team of my best friends, and we worked there. It was great.
Was one of them Guillaume?
Guillaume. Yes. Yes, Guillaume was one of them. Guillaume in English is William, if you want to call him William or
cool.
Will. So Guillaume was one of them. Jean-Louis was one of them. And it's funny because Jean-Louis, I saw him when I went to Sydney for the Canva season opener. I spent the whole weekend with him because he lives in Sydney. Yeah.
Small world. It's cool that you've been able to maintain those connections, Ronny.
Yeah, but Jean-Louis, GL, I haven't seen him for almost 10 years. He was with me when I did my +2 masters in development. That's where I met him. He's a French guy, but he ended up living in Sydney, and I connected back with him months ago, so that's crazy.
And so after that, you've got your buddies, you throw the conference. It sounds like you absolutely loved it. Is that one of those things where you say, okay, things are starting to click, and realizing that this is more what I'm supposed to be doing?
Oh, I knew this was what I wanted to be doing.
Okay.
So my goal after this was to be so good that Oxfam would hire me. That was my plan.
In an event coordinator kind of position?
Like kind of a campaign manager.
Okay.
Or like one more employee that works at Oxfam in the campaigning. Because Oxfam, they have like the logistical kind of part of the business that deals with buying and selling fair trade products. And then they have the campaigning wing of Oxfam, which is like advocacy campaigns and promoting fair trade and education, stuff like that. So I was hoping they would hire me. And so they did. Like they were like, after the conference, the general secretary of Oxfam is like, Ronny, you really did a good job. I want to offer you a job. I want you to be my assistant. And so I was like, yeah, let's do this. But he told me, you have to wait 2 months or so because I already have an assistant. So I need to promote him to another position and then take you in. And so I was like this at the end of it. I was exhausted, but I had a job. I was like, yes, I made it. And so I decided to go visit my buddy Derek in Barcelona and have the good life for a couple of weeks. And I did that.
That sounds dope.
another
I know we got stories in there too, but we don't have to tell them.
Yeah, but I don't know if I can tell them.
The Canva group be knowing.
Okay, so the highlights of Barcelona, and don't do this at home, was that with Derek, I landed there, and he was living already like 2 or 3 dudes crashing in his place, and so it was a 1-bedroom apartment. We were like 6 people living there. And at some point, like, it was fun, but at some point he decided to move out, and we decided together to find an apartment together. So we found this cool apartment in the center of Barcelona, but it was too big and too expensive for just the 2 of us. So we decided to take it anyways, and then we would just go find tourists and sub-rent rooms in the apartment every day, kind of like the pioneer of Airbnb.
Airbnb,
there was no Airbnb at the time. And so he was working in a bank at this time, and I was just there. I knew I had a job back in Belgium. When I go back, I was just waiting for it to happen. And I decided, well, both together, but to kind of have this free couple of rooms that we would rent on a day-to-day basis. And every day I was just cleaning up the house, going to the main plaza, like Plaza Catalunya in Barcelona. I would just spot the tourists and say, hey guys, are you looking for a place? We have this extra room, I can give you a good price. And I would come back every day with some tourists. They would pay us to stay in the room. The next day they were gone. And like this, we did this for a month. And at some point we had like 5-6 people staying long-term, like a couple of days.
Yeah.
So the money was good, but a lot of partying. And the neighbors, they kind of saw like in and out, people coming in with backpacks and leaving. And it was kind of a mess, but we had a good time. And at some point we got busted by the owner. He came back, the landlord, and he kicked us out, like from one day to the other. And we were without a place to live.
Wow.
So that's
kids, don't do this at home.
Don't do this at home.
Don't do this at home. But okay, so you have a blast for those 2 months. You're doing it with the homie.
Yep.
And then you come back, and what's that job? What's the assistant gig like?
Well, I come back to learn that the general secretary has been fired. And
the guy you're supposed to be the assistant for?
Yeah, and so there's no more job for me.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, that was kind of a shitty news. And, that's the beginning of a long, desperate stroll of me trying to find the right job for me in Belgium. I did, without kidding, 30 different jobs.
What?
I had a friend.
Highlights of a couple of them. What were they?
I worked as a delivery guy for some kind of, how do you call these, like Best Buy kind of shops. Like I was delivering fridges on the 3rd floor.
With two
TVs.
masters.
Yeah, I took on a job that was just translating stuff. So they would give me tapes. I would have to listen to it and just write it. I did one of the stupidest job I worked for. But the way I got these jobs was through a temp agency. So I had a friend, he was running the temp agency. So I just got there and told him, just give me whatever you have. And so he gave me a bunch of jobs like that. One of them was just for a pharmaceutical company. They had a batch of product that was not good. They were not sure if they were good or not good, but it was kind of like medical supplies. And you just had to pick one box, do like this, see if it had some air inside. And if it was no air, then you put it on this side, air, you put it on this. And I did that for 6 days. And I hated it. And but this kind of things, they give you a perspective in
Listen,
life.
I used to work for a temp. I used to work, not work for a temp agency, but work with a temp agency for gigs back in Philly. So, bro, I feel you when you say there are all these things, and you're just like, and you're like, and in your mind you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Exactly.
But okay, so you worked 30 jobs.
But I was trying to find a job in an NGO. I was applying for jobs at NGOs, though they were not. I tried everything fair trade related. There was nothing at the time. And then, I ended up working for an organic shop. So, I ended up working for kind of a lawyer's firm as an assistant. I didn't like it, but it was good money. So I did that. And at some point, the manager was a cool guy. This firm, they were making millions. They were just taking on huge real estate projects. and building buildings in Brussels like crazy. So I could see a different world, like a world of money, like where money was made. And of course, I was not making much of that money, but I was like a regular pay, nice offices and stuff, but shitty job. And so this guy told me, you know, Ronny, the next job you take, you should stay at least 2 years. That's my piece of advice. And so, yeah, I kind of followed his piece of advice. He told me somebody at that firm had a wife who was starting a chain of organic shops. And they thought fair trade, organic shops, same stuff. Was not. But I ended up working for this organic shop as a buyer. I did 1 year as a buyer, 1 year as the manager of one of the shops when they kind of grew. And it was fun. It was okay. And then after 2 years, I got bored and got out. And that's when I started Fair Trade Connection.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you do this thing, this 2-year kind of stint in this thing, and that whole time, are you kind of in the back of your mind saying, man, I kind of want to do my own thing? I feel like there's an element to you that I relate to that has this kind of independent streak, but spent a lot of time
figuring that out, trying to find the right fit.
Yeah, and nothing quite clicks.
And then I realized one important thing in my life is that I was not made, if Canva people listen to me, I was not made to be an employee. I was an entrepreneur at heart because I felt like every time I had a job and a boss, I would feel limited because my creativity, my energy would just want to do more and just start new stuff and new projects. And I always felt limited. But it's different at Canva because they gave me a white card to create. So
I think that's the difference, is that if you have, I think working for employers that don't understand that, where I feel the same way, where I was like, all the jobs that I had, if it had been a company that actually understood me, I don't think it's the idea of working for somebody else's thing as much as it is working within the confines of shit that you don't necessarily agree with.
Yes.
And so I think the fact that recently with the Canvas stuff, which we'll get into in a little bit, goes a long way of just saying, hey, that doesn't have to do with working for someone else, but having freedom, the autonomy to express myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Even within this company, as long as I can get my ideas out. So, and so kind of building to that, how you have this idea to start Fair Trade Connection, but starting your own thing, that takes some startup capital. It's hard to do it solo. How does that kind of form?
So at the time, I was with a partner who was also into that. She was interested in fair trade, and she helped during the conference I organized. She was part of the team. Her name is Sophie. And she was cool, and she kind of helped me put together the foundations of Fair Trade Connection. My brother was also kind of involved as the graphic designer. He designed a nice visual identity and a logo and stuff like that. So that was nice. And then when I started, so the job at the organic shop kind of went sideways, and they asked me, they wanted to give me a promotion, but it was kind of a fake promotion where they would give me more money, but also ask me to give more of my time. And I didn't really want to do this unless they would accept my ideas and go and follow some of the projects I had in mind. They didn't want that. They just wanted me to do more of the same. And I said no, and so they fired me. But it was kind of an agreement, because if they fired me, I would get what we call in Belgium unemployment benefits. And so that gave me my full pay for 1 year, even though I was not working.
Wow.
That was an amazing opportunity for me to develop my own business. And I took advantage of this 1 year of being paid but not having to work to develop Fair Trade Connection.
Wow, that's such a sweet gig to need to get fired. Okay, so you take that year, you put it to good use. Talk to me a little bit about that first year after the building of it, that first year of really going this thing full time.
The thing is that the project I started to work on as Fair Trade Connection was different than what it was. It still is. It still exists, but I'm less active now. I have less time. At first, it was kind of like an eBay for fair trade. That was the idea of a marketplace, a website that would just connect buyers and sellers That was my idea. And then I started to really work hard on this, develop some mock-ups for the website. And then I won some kind of award that gave me access to a communication agency that would coach me, that would become kind of coaches, like business coaches. So I had a couple of sessions with these guys, and they told me, Ronny, this is a good idea, but creating such a website is going to cost you in the tens of thousands of euros, like around 30 to 40,000 euros to develop such a website, and there is no guarantee people in the fair trade industry will actually use it. So it's very risky. And this kind of opened my eyes. I agree with them. And so this is where I flipped the business, and I decided not to become the eBay of fair trade, but to become the fair trade TV, basically. So what I wanted is to connect the people who make the product and the people who buy and consume the product, consumers, so that they can have the story behind their favorite fair trade products. That was the whole idea of Fair Trade Connection. Excuse me, to connect consumers and producers. And so the way we would do that was with video. So I started to work on this business model, which was way easier to get out of the box and made a reality. So I only needed to learn how to shoot and edit videos and convince somebody in the fair trade industry to send me to their producers, and I would create content for them. So that was Fair Trade Connection. And guess who was the first company who sent me?
Oxfam?
Exactly. See, you've been following. So yeah, Oxfam, I could convince them to trust me. They were like, you're a video producer now? And I was like, yeah, well, I'm learning. So hold on to that. And they were like, at first they told me, well, we will pay you so that you travel there and you shoot the images, but we work with a communication agency here in Brussels, and they will do the movies because we know you're not a video producer.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, so it was not a lot of money, but at the time it was 7,000 euros for 1 year on the road, so not enough.
Wow.
And in between this time and when I actually started, I lived for 6 months in Tunisia. And there I started to go to fair trade projects in Tunisia, shoot some videos, edit some videos, and I showed this stuff to Oxfam, and it was not that good, but at the time it was the best I could do, and they liked it. So they told me, okay, Ronny, actually that's not too bad. You can shoot and create the videos for us. So we went from 7K to 14K for the first year, and that was enough for the both of us to just go and do it. So we had a contract. We would go to India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Chile, Ecuador, and Kenya for Oxfam and shoot with 6 of their producers. That was the contract, and deliver for each producer 3 videos. So
And that was for 1 year?
that took us almost a year.
How does that go? That sounds like such an adventure.
It was an adventure. It was Fair Trade Connection. We were super pumped. It was me and my girlfriend at the time. And yeah, we hit the road, and then we just went to India first, 2 projects in India. And we did more than what Oxfam sent us to do because we were there. And so we tried to get as many projects as we could. Some we did for free, some we did compensated, like some other ways. But the money was not great, but the adventure was like awesome.
That's where it's at. That sounds like such a crazy year.
It was. It was not just 1 year; it was a couple of years actually. But
just for that project from India to
no, the first contract was 1 year, but then we got some other contract. I went on like this for 6 years, 7 years. Yeah. So
wow.
That was Fair Trade Connection. The first year. After that, I spent some time in Barcelona because that was the deal with my girlfriend at the time, that we would do 1 year on the road and then settle somewhere so she could do her career. We did that. We split up. And then I continued by myself. And then I met Diana, who's my actual partner. And then that's how it goes, yeah.
That's fascinating. So of those years doing fair trade, do you have any maybe highlights that you could draw out of that were either stories that really stuck out or things that listeners, they say, they hear 6 years, myself included, we say, wow, that's a long time. What were some, because I know that could be podcast episodes for ages on itself.
We could have a whole year
an entire year podcast just from those stories. What are maybe some highlights before we get into the more current stage that really resonated
What
with
you want on a professional level or just life lessons?
Let's go life lessons.
All right. So life lessons, I've been to 30 plus countries and work with grassroots entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs in many of these countries. So countries like Bangladesh or countries like India or most of the countries of Southeast Asia, Latin America, some countries in Africa. So I really had a variety of cultures there and people and socio-economic level. I work with really poor people in rural Bangladesh who had a very, very simple house, life. And these people were amazing. Like they would cook for us, give us the best fish or the best meat or whatever. So I think that the most touching life lesson is usually the people who have the less are the ones that want to give you the most. Like they really want to welcome you. And I really felt like also I was privileged to be a European white guy. And I had so many privileges, like the passport, like the economics, the uprising I had, like the upbringing I had, like everything was just so easy for me. I've been like working and interviewing people who work super hard just to put food on the table and a roof over the head of their children. And that's their life. Like they struggle so hard just to cover these basics. And so this kind of opened my eyes and showed me how lucky I was and kind of developed this gratitude that I try to practice every day and remember that, like how lucky I am to be this human person. I didn't choose it, but many people take it for granted. And I don't. I try to remember every morning that this is not the average Joe. Like we are lucky. We are the lucky ones. So yeah, that's probably
a huge lesson, and I think the past year and some change traveling, that's something that's resonated with me too. Is that exact same sentiment as you start to just you reflect on yourself a little bit and realize how much you're given. And I think you're right. A lot of folks, myself included, take it for granted. That is something I have to practice because we're human and we adapt. And just to say, man, like you start to see how much that you are, that you have just in our situation. So, what were some maybe stories of also some craziness? Either like, do you have any like crazy like getting robbed at gunpoint or like being chased by an elephant or like some crazy village in the mountains somewhere where the people like I don't know, live in trees or something. I don't know, like anything's kind of jump out that
kind
was
of crazy. I was pretty lucky, like never lost any equipment, got robbed.
Wow.
Nothing like that. What was crazy?
Or maybe something interesting, maybe some interesting place you went or kind
many places were interesting. I really was struck by the energy in countries like Bangladesh. Like Bangladesh is like a country where most tourists don't go.
I don't think I've met many folks that have been.
So not many people go there, and I've been there 3 times or 4 times. I don't remember for work, but people are just so cool over there. Like they don't see many tourists, so when they see a white guy, and I'm tall, so I stuck out.
Why do you think people don't go there?
Well, because it's not very developed for tourism. There's not much infrastructure. People go to India and not to Bangladesh because it's easier to travel. It has more appeal. And I understand why. It's not easy to travel in Bangladesh. It's intense. It's funny because I've been there with a fair trade organization that contracted us to work there with us. So they wanted us to go with them, accompany them visiting their producers, but document the whole thing. And it was Canadians. So they came from Canada, they'd never been to Asia, and they landed in Bangladesh,
Wow.
Actually Nepal and then Bangladesh.
Talk
So we
about-
started with Nepal, but we were with them the whole time. We went to pick them up at the airport, Diana and I, and then we accompanied them, and then we could just see the look on their faces when they discovered
That's a
the butcher
culture
shop in
shock.
the street is just a piece of meat hanging in the streets, and they were like, "That's the butcher shop." I was like, "Yeah," and then Bangladesh, it was even more intense. So, yeah, it was crazy, and we saw at this point like how well traveled we were
Mhm.
compared to the average Western person.
And so you guys do that, U&D, and
Yeah.
I know that a little bit, but the tail end of that, how do you end up, because we're in Thailand now, U&D have this really cool studio, great space. What is it that ends up sparking the idea to settle in Thailand?
Well, it's 7 years on the road. For me, 10 years without an apartment, being mostly broke, like no money, not much money. We were making enough to continue the business. I was supposed to pay myself a little salary and pay myself. When I say myself, I would just take my little small salary and split it between Diana and I when I could do it, because most of the time I could not even take that salary, because if I took it, there was no money for traveling. So we decided not to take it and just travel. It's only when we had a nice juicy contract, and that only started to happen like in the last 2 or 3 years, then we would take a little bit. And I don't have to complain. I mean, we'd never lacked anything, but it's just like
It's hard.
like
Traveling
yeah,
is
we
broke is
lived
hard.
we lived a frugal life. Like we didn't spend too much. We didn't go to fancy places. We did like take some good time. Like we did a bit of scuba diving, a little bit of exploring. So all in all, it was a good life, but not a luxurious life. It was like a very reasonable and moderate life in terms of spending money. And so I guess it's the fact of working in an industry where you're not very well paid, even though you reach to the top of this, because the companies are NGOs, non-profits, and they don't have big budgets to pay
Yeah.
for communications and video and stuff like that. So, yeah, so this, not having a place to live and having to move around every 2 months, because that was our frequency, like our cadence. We would move from country to country every month or every 2 months. And we would come to Chiang Mai, Thailand, or Ubud, Indonesia, quite regularly when we didn't have a contract. So if we were in Asia, we would maybe probably work in India, probably work in Bangladesh, maybe work in Nepal. And if we don't have anything, we just come to Chiang Mai, stay here until our visa expires, and then go to the next country. But we would come back to Chiang Mai maybe twice a year or something like that and stay 2 months. And then we kind of felt comfortable in Chiang Mai and we liked it, and that's how at some point we decided, you know what, let's settle and stop like being nomadic. Yeah, it was a big decision for us, a good one, but difficult to take because Fair Trade Connection was my baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then how does that pivot end up going from Fair FTC into kind of the courses and,
Yep.
and the other business element there? So you settle in Chiang Mai, but you say, okay, if we're not traveling around,
Yeah, how do we make money?
Yeah, what are we doing now?
Yeah, good question. So we already had started education with Fair Trade Connection. So the more we would travel to these fair trade organizations, the more we would notice that all these fair trade organizations, but really they were non-profits and social entrepreneurs, they all suffered from the same pains. They all had a pretty bad visual identity, bad logo, bad design in general. They all had a bad website, and they all like had problems telling their story, like storytelling, impact storytelling, showing the world the kind of impact they were making as a nonprofit. And it's super important when you're a nonprofit. You need to tell your target audience, this is what we do, this is the kind of impact we are having, and that's how you get more volunteers, donors, and customers if you sell stuff. So we started to put together like very informal training. At the beginning, it was just me sitting at the computer with somebody from marketing at these projects. After a long shooting day, I would just show them a couple of tricks on Facebook or whatever. And then this evolved into a 1 or 2 hour training session, which was kind of messy. I was going all over the place, digital marketing. That was 10, 12 years ago. Not 12 years ago. That was 6, 7 years ago. And then when I met Diana, she was much more into digital marketing. And so she helped me structure this thing. It became a 3-day workshop that we gave everywhere we were going, basically. That was another income revenue for us. And so we started to organize these 3-day digital marketing workshops, and people loved them. They liked them because they needed that. So we really understood their pains, and we were trying to educate on what we knew about this for the fair trade industry. That was nice. At some point, we were running like workshops with 15 companies in Kathmandu, or in Thailand, we did this as well. So in many countries, actually. So we did that. And when we came back, or actually before we came back, before we decided to settle, we had this idea of creating the Fair Trade Academy, which was a website where we would digitalize this training and create online courses. So we spent about 8 months. That was kind of like the end of what we were working on with Fair Trade Connection. When we were not shooting videos and storytelling, we were creating this platform. So we created an LMS, like a learning management system with WordPress from scratch, 3 courses that we put there, and nobody bought them. So we were like, this is not working. It's almost a year of work that goes down the drain. And yeah.
That's so frustrating.
Oh, you're losing your voice.
Yeah, I know. It's starting to go. So you do that for a year. It doesn't work, but then you end up having success with the online course a little bit later. Yep. And so what's the switch that...
So the switch is that we come here, settled in Chiang Mai. We got the education visa. So now we are legit living in Chiang Mai. We can stay here long term. And we go to school. We learn Thai, and that's cool. But the rest of the time, we continue to work on our stuff. And Diana and I, we then decided to go full on creating more courses. And we were working on this Fair Trade Academy, still thinking it's going to take off. So that was the thing. And then we went to the Nomad Summit. So the Nomad Summit is a digital nomad conference here in Chiang Mai, where digital nomads are these online entrepreneurs who kind of live from anywhere. They are location independent, and they run all sorts of online businesses. And in Chiang Mai, there's a community of digital nomads. And so this is probably why we like Chiang Mai. And so the Nomad Summit was this kind of conference where they all go in January. And I know you went last year. We went together. It was cool. So that was the year before. And we met this guy called Alex. And Alex was killing it on Udemy. He was making a bunch of money with his cybersecurity courses. And he inspired us. So he became a friend. We hung out. And then he told us, why don't you guys put your courses on Udemy? You have the skills. Your courses are probably very good. Just put them on Udemy. And we did, and the next day we were selling. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They sold the next day, seriously?
Well, yeah, seriously, like just 1 or 2, but not like you became
but,
rich overnight.
But still, it's more than nothing.
Yeah. I had a sale, like, and you know, Udemy sells your courses for very low price. So I guess the first sale was maybe $3, but it worked. Like, it was this little spark telling me I can sell.
Yeah.
And so that was the first time ever I got paid, like completely with an online kind of business. And the thing that I did, I put one of the courses, the visual identity course that I created for the fair trade organizations, I put that as it was directly on Udemy. So normally there's no fit for the kind of market on Udemy, but people still bought it. And that was the one course that I had there for 4 months. That was my only course. Then I created another small course, the flat icon course. And then I really started to get serious about this because I had a proof of concept that this is working.
Yeah.
I was making around $300 per month with this one course. And so I decided, okay, let's create a nice, good course that is not for fair trade organization, but for Udemy's audience. And that's when I decided to create the Canva master course. Yep.
And so you were already designing with Canva at this point?
Yep, because Canva gives away their the pro version of Canva to a bunch of nonprofits. So that's a philanthropical program that they have. It's called Canva for Nonprofits, and we have had been beneficiaries of that with Fair Trade Connection since 2.5 years already.
Because I think it's so interesting that you got into video work having like a business background, and then you got into design, and that was also from like or like you didn't have design or video experience, but it was just
just learn by doing.
Yes,
you know, like when you're an entrepreneur, you have to do everything.
That's what I love, is that it's all self-taught. You know, same. I think a lot of folks don't realize that it's all online. You can all, if you have the drive to make it happen, you can learn whatever you want. And so now, kind of shifting gears into something a little bit more current state. You do the Canva. You start running a Canva group. You run the classes. The group really starts to take off. You start to see success with the classes. And talk a little bit about now sort of this more recent transition in the sense of what you've been working on currently and what the future holds for you.
Okay, so I created the Canva master course, and my idea back then, like I kind of went on Udemy, kind of search for Canva. A bunch of courses were already there. I checked them out, and I thought, okay, I can do better. So my promise back then was, I'm going to create the best course about Canva. I know how to create video courses. I had done it 3 times already. I'm a video producer. I can do this. And so I got to work. I was working at the Entrepreneurship Center here in Chiang Mai, a nice studio. They had nice microphones and everything. I recorded my course. Took me a bunch of months, like 4 months or something, to get the course ready. And I had fun. Like I'm a perfectionist, so I went too much into the details of really adding like animations and fun jokes and stuff. And so the course was really good and still really good. And my audience loved it. And when I launched it, parallel to that, I created my Canva community. Well, I already had a Facebook group, but nothing was going on. So I decided, okay, I'm going to use this as a support community for the course. And that's the story of Learn to Design with Canva. Now we have 10K followers. And the philosophy there was, yes, I have this paid course. And it wasn't that clear at the beginning. So today, I'm not really pushing to try to sell in this group. I'm more like providing value and being useful to people, creating a nice community, a nice vibe where people like to hang out and help each other and come for some discussion around design and Canva. But at the beginning, I was still like a little bit, how do I sell more? How do I push my sales?
Right.
And so I tried different things. But then I realized what works is to help people. Like to genuinely be there for people, answer their questions, and genuinely care about like empowering the other people to become better designers, helping them with their own businesses, and just I have fun doing it as well, like answering these questions, reviewing the designs people were submitting in the group. So all this led me to build a community of people who appreciated me and the care and effort I was putting in the group, and that translated into more sales on Udemy and also Skillshare, and I have a YouTube channel now which has an affiliate link for a free trial on Skillshare. So this has been bringing me an income as well. So that's how it grew. The business grew like this. But the most interesting thing is that people really liked the community. Like they liked it, and we grew so big that we grew bigger than the official Canva group, the Canva design circle. It was called at the time. Now it's called the design. It was called the inner circle. Now they changed it to design circle. So we became bigger than their group, and that's where they started to pay attention to what I was doing, and it ended up them getting into my group, and Cliff, one of the co-founders, just offering me a job, and you know the story, like I've documented this already in the group. I went to Sydney. They invited me to talk at their season opener, but they already had given me kind of a hint that they wanted to hire me. So I went there, got to know the team, was made an offer for working with them, accepted the offer, and now since a week and a little bit, I'm working for them remotely from here, from Chiang Mai, half time, and the rest of my time I still work on my course because I've been working on a course which is a personal branding master course.
Yes, and so this is the one that and folks that don't know, Ronny helped me shoot and record my course, and so I finally got a chance to see kind of behind the scenes of what goes into the course, and you've been working on this course for so long. And he showed me some the other day, and it kicks butt. And so I know folks know that you've been hired by Canva doing that, but talk a little bit about the course. Kind of, I've seen it go from just kind of the skeleton of an idea to now kind of almost being complete, kind of with the
almost done.
Almost done. It's like finishing touches. So
just hold on there.
Talk a little bit about this course. It blew me away.
Okay, so the course is called the Personal Branding Master Course, How to Become the Go-To Person in Your Niche. And it's really inspired by my own personal story, how in about a year and a half, I started a course about Canva, started a community about Canva, and then I kind of grew to become the go-to person for Canva education, and that led me to actually being hired by Canva. So it's kind of like a personal branding success story. And I realized, because during this whole journey, I kept learning, I listened to a bunch of podcasts, I followed a bunch of people on social media, and I really educated myself while doing it. So I would listen to stuff, and I know you did too, and I would just implement that in my business, experiment, fail sometime, and then try again and do something else. And so I decided, okay, my next course, I did a bunch of smaller courses for Skillshare and stuff in between, but my next big course, I wanted to be this story. I want to explain how anybody, if they work hard and understand what they are doing, find their audience, decide really what they want to do, who they want to help, build a solid visual identity, start creating content, and distribute their content and really serve their audience. Anybody can position themselves as the go-to expert in any niche. And so the course is about this. It's a roadmap that explains people how to get from the very start to being the go-to person in their niche.
Right. I think I might need to take that. I know. Sure. I think that might be the next course I need to take, because I could definitely use some help with that. So, for folks that are kind of tuning in now that they know, the backstory, what you're doing, what's next for them. Let's wrap this up and tell folks kind of, what are you looking forward to? What's next for you? And if you'd want them to either check out the course or check out the group, how can you help them?
Well, people already know where to find me. It's in the group. They know I'm accessible. They can ask any sort of question. I would love for them to check out the course. To be very honest, this course is going to be a steal. I mean, I'm going to put this on Udemy. They are probably going to push it around $15. And without kidding, I've been working about a year.
Seriously,
in the making of this course.
It was last January, last Nomad Summit.
I have 2 people on my payroll right now that are working for me, that I'm paying to help me finish this course, because me working part-time for Canva now cannot have the time to do it all by myself. So I have a very cool video editor, Eleazar, and I have a very cool designer, Cyrene, who are helping me with the course to finish it. And so really this course, selling at $15, it's a steal. So you would be crazy not to get it. and it's really good. So check it out for yourself. When I will launch it, and I have a bunch of faithful students as well who took my Canva Master course, saw the kind of level I was laying out there. Like, I raised the bar with this one course, and so they expect the next course to be as good, and they won't be disappointed. So when it's out, I will promote it in the group. People can get it on Udemy. I will have a coupon for them. That's how they get the course. And about where I'm going, the future, well, now I'm working part-time for Canva. I will be working full-time from Sydney, so I will move to Sydney in February. And then I will become a full-fledged Canva employee. I still plan on keeping this community. That was one of the negotiation point with Canva, like what happens to the community and my courses, my content. They agreed that I could keep that. So I still have to really decide how it's going to go down with the community. I will probably at some point introduce Diana to the community, who's my partner. She's also a very good designer. She's my right hand since forever. And And I've talked to her about this and continuing creating tutorials for you guys and everything when I'm maybe too busy to do everything myself. I will try to be here as much as I can. But that's kind of like the future. We have some other big projects, but I will have limited time. So my plan is to do the most good with Canva because they have an awesome team there. The little I've seen so far, it's really amazing. They have resources, they have a team, they have talent, and they have a vision. They want to do big things. So they also gave me a custom-made position where I will deal with education, nonprofit, and community. And they expect me to kind of help them grow their communities. So yeah, I will pretty much do the same with a team this time and more resources. Just try to make the most good with Canva.
Ronny, thank you so much for
Thank
giving
you,
me some of
Kia.
your time today. Guys, if you don't already know, this man does so much for the group. I'll answer your questions. Seriously, my gold standard for a group. He makes it look so easy that I was like, maybe I should even give this a shot. So I need to take Ronny's course and then follow it to a T because I could use some of this man's help. So I hope this was informative for you as it was for me. Thank you for tuning in. It was nice to finally get some of the backstory too. When the cameras are off, I might have to ask some other questions about some of these 2 or 3 month in between adventures for some of the details off mic. But guys, thank you also for tuning in. If you made it this far,
Yep.
it means a lot. I appreciate your attention, and
Yep.
I hope that you check out the course too. Just seeing what I have, it's gonna probably blow you away as much as it did me.
Well, thanks, Kia, for this interviewing me. And also, you should check out this guy. He's a music producer.
Flexing.
Where can people listen to your songs?
You can find me everywhere at Kia Orion. It's KIA like the car, Orion, ORION like the
You
stars.
should post some of your like SoundCloud in the group. Then.
Yeah, you know, if you need tunes, if you're in the group and you need tunes for any of your videos or anything like that,
It makes really good sound.
I'd love to. I
And
paid him to say
as
that.
we finish this podcast, we are going to record the intro sections for my course, like this personal branding course. I need some tunes for that, and that's what we're going to do next. So
What's up? So if you do need tunes, Ronny's course will be a place where you can hear some of my stuff too.
Yep.
So if you need it, you know where to find me. I'm open, flexible, always looking for new opportunities to work with folks.
cool, man. So it was really nice. You lived up to your reputation of the podcaster of the year.
I try.
You have the golden mic.
Yeah.
I give you my golden mic. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.
I hope you continue being awesome in this community. I hope you liked this like alien kind of piece of content today. Just my story, Kia interviewing me. I had fun doing it. I would for sure listen to it again and again, show this to my kids and grandkids and grandkids.
Digitally
Digital
through
kids.
VR.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being with you. And yeah, go out, create something beautiful with Canva if you can. And I'll see you in the next video.
Peace out.